Hi everyone, I'm Chris Marr, the Product Compliance Lead at Datacom for Smartly and DataPay. I've been at Datacom for over 20 years now and was one of the creators of the Smartly product back in 2004. In this video, I'll be talking about payroll compliance and what this means for your business and your payroll processes. So you might be wondering, what exactly is payroll compliance? Payroll compliance means complying with the legislative acts and regulations that impact paying employees. First, we have the acts associated with meeting employers' tax responsibilities on behalf of their employees. This means the Income Tax Act for rules around PAYE, the KiwiSaver Act for collection of employee and employer deductions to KiwiSaver, and the Accident Compensation Act for the collection of employer and employee levies to cover workplace and non-workplace accidents. Next, we have the rules around meeting minimum employment standards, ensuring that employees are receiving their correct entitlements. These include the Employment Relations Act, which covers things like what should be included in an employment agreement, wage and time records, and the need to bargain employment conditions in good faith. Then we have the Holidays Act. That describes holiday and time off provisions, which continue to be an extremely challenging area to comply with in New Zealand. Following this, we have the Wages Protection Act, which sets rules around deductions from an employee's salary and wages and when they may and may not be taken. We also have the Minimum Wage Act, which sets out rules for setting the minimum wage payable to employees, which, as at the 1st of April this year, is going to be increased to $22.70 per hour. And then we have the Parental Leave and Employment Protection Act, which sets out certain rules relating to the entitlement of parental leave and the impact that this leave has on employment. And this is just some of the legislation that's involved in employee payments, and that's a lot for any business to keep on top of. So how can payroll software keep you compliant? With all the legislation involved in payroll and the complexity involved in some of the calculations around tax and holiday route calculations, it's not surprising that a market for payroll software has evolved to help employers and service providers through the complex world of paying staff correctly and meeting their legislative responsibilities. You may be wondering how to choose the right payroll software. Choosing the right payroll software is not as straightforward as it might seem. Not all payroll software products are created equal. Here are some of the things that you should consider when you're choosing your payroll software. Does the software help automate the end-to-end payroll process? Good payroll software assists you throughout the entire payroll process, from gathering inputs, automating the tax and net amount calculations, and direct crediting employees and the tax department. You want to say goodbye to manual calculations and spreadsheets, saving you time, money, and stress when it comes to paying your staff. Does it take the stress out of keeping up to date with the latest legislation changes? Using a payroll system that is automatically updated helps keep you up to date with any changes to legislation, such as the Holidays Act, PAYE, and new payday filing requirements. And that's a must to help you remain compliant and avoid any unexpected penalties. Is it compatible with New Zealand legislation? It's fair to say that the New Zealand Holidays Act, for example, is like nowhere else in the world. And the complex rules to calculate entitlements and rates of pay are very unique to the New Zealand landscape, which is why it's really important to know that you're choosing a payroll software that understands New Zealand legislation. Can you get free expert help? As I'm sure you're aware by now, payroll is an extremely complex subject, and it can be a daunting task to try and figure it all out on your own. Whether you want to talk through the latest tax changes or you need help setting up new employees, having support when you need it is vital to help you remain compliant. Is it easy to use? Payroll is hard enough without also having to figure out how to use non-intuitive software. If your software is too hard to use, the chances of you making a mistake increase significantly, and therefore the chances of you becoming non-compliant increase, which is why it's important that you're able to run your pays and set up your business with ease. Can you trust your data will remain secure? Finally, it's important that your data is kept safe and secure. Payroll is full of your employees' sensitive information, which is the last thing you want to lose or get stolen. So you should be sure to check how your payroll information is being stored when choosing payroll software for your business and what practices and standards are in place. What is the importance of setting up your payroll correctly? Once you've chosen the software that you're going to use and you'd like to work with, the next step on your compliance journey is making sure that the things are set up correctly. It is especially important when setting up your payroll that your leave is imported accurately and into the system in order to remain compliant. Setting up leave relies heavily on historic data and performing calculations, and issues of non-compliance can often be tracked back to when systems are first set up and when transferring data between different systems. At Smartly, we use a standard templated approach to capture employer and employee information to ensure that your historic leave earnings are accurately calculated and data is transferred accurately across into Smartly. How leave balances are managed are also important. The easiest way to stay compliant with your leave balances is to hold leave balance units in the same units as that held in the Holidays Act, which is weeks for annual leave and days for FBAPS leave. Now, FBAPS is actually an abbreviation for family violence, bereavement, alternate public holiday, public holidays, and sick leave. A lot easier to say FBAPS. So, how do you maintain payroll compliance? With the level of automation provided in payroll software, it may be tempted to take your hands completely off the steering wheel and expect the payroll software alone is going to keep you compliant. I recommend don't do that. Payroll is not a static set and forget activity. Keeping your payroll compliant involves constantly monitoring for change. A lot of calculations rely on having historic data, and it can quickly become non-compliant if changes are not made when they're supposed to. So I work closely with Smartly to make sure that the product is up to date with any key changes and automating these as much as possible. But making sure that payroll reflects what your employees are actually working is something that ultimately only you, as their employer, knows. At the end of the tax year, it still pays to familiarise yourself with the main changes that apply for the coming year. Make sure that your team's minimum wages are checked and that any new rates and thresholds, if they need to be configured, are completed.